Next up is Voices of Change with your hosts, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Voices of Change is to connect, inform, and empower people to engage in social political change. Right here on USALA Radio. World news, local politics, saving money and investing, all this and more right here on USALA Radio. Your voice, your radio.
Listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio with your hosts, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Today we're going to have an interesting discussion about the Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office. The City of Philadelphia Commissioner's Office is occupied by three officials that are responsible for administering voter registration and conducting elections for the county of Philadelphia County. The office was created to replace the Philadelphia County Commissioners following the consolidation of the city and county in 1854. While subject to the Home Rule Charter, the commissioners are considered county officials and do not report to the council or to the mayor. So it functions as an independent body. The board has three members, all elected every 4 years by the voters of Philadelphia. And today, we're going to discuss two specific things. Obviously, we're going to get into further discussions about these two topics that we're going to expand on: the purpose of the Commissioner's Office and its function. And we're also going to talk about how Act 77 makes historical changes to the PA election code. Today, we are joined by Lisa Deely, who is one of the commissioners. Omar Sabir, he confirmed, and hopefully he will be joining us in a few minutes. But just to give an introduction as to who Lisa is the current commissioner. She was elected as city commissioner in January 2016. Since then, as city commissioner, Lisa has made it a priority to bring the electoral process to the citizens of Philadelphia. She has used her background in constituent services and outreach to bring the commissioner's office to the people, which is very important. In December of 2017, Lisa was voted by her fellow commissioners to be chairwoman of the Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office. So welcome, Lisa, welcome, Aissia. So let's get this started and let's get this conversation started in regards to what is the function and the purpose of the City Commissioner's Office. So welcome, ladies.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Lisa, let's start with the first question. I think that a lot of people probably, are confused or don't know or just don't have the information as to really what's the function and the purpose of the Commissioner's Office. I mean, that is so important. And what's the function of it? What's the purpose and why that office is so important here in the city of Philadelphia?
Thank you. Well, first of all, the Office of the City Commissioners is charged with administrating elections. In Philadelphia, that is quite a task because we have a very large population, very diverse. It is our job to make sure that Election Day functions in Philadelphia in a way that people feel as though they can freely go and exercise their right to vote. And we're also responsible for maintaining voter registration and making sure that people's voter registrations are all updated and processed correctly. And we have another dual role, which is also we are the depository for the state for campaign finance. So we also are responsible for campaigns and committees and as far as their campaign finance requirements go. People say, well, what do you do the rest of the year? And quite honestly, the function of elections takes a long time. It takes from 6 months to the next 6 months for everything to get finalized and then to start back up again for the next election. For example, we just wrapped up the June 2nd primary in what is probably the most amazing circumstances that we've ever had. And the state, we have 20 days to certify by law. So that election will be certified on the deadline. So that takes, then once the election becomes certified, then we have to unpack that whole election and we have to put it all away and file it. And when we do, we do a round table and we figure out, where we, where we could have done better. And, we try to improve every time. We're happy to say that, we had a really positive implementation of new voting system in 19. It was, challenging, and it was met with a lot of, scrutiny, but we thought it was the best decision to put those machines out in 19 so that we wouldn't be introducing new technology in 20. Gosh, who would have known what a good decision that was when we see how we had to have the 20 election to just add another piece to that with a new voting system would have been even that much more challenging. So as we look to the future, we know that we have to continue to educate and to familiarize the voters with the new voting system. In addition, as you mentioned, we are totally transformed by Act 77 and the opportunity that it gives Pennsylvanians to vote by mail with no excuse. Seeing that tsunami of paper applications hit the commissioner's office was really enlightening. And we know that November is completely different election. It's the busiest election in the whole election cycle.
Yeah.
And we know we have to be able to stand it up for election day. But in addition, we have to be prepared for what we believe is continued increase in the mail-in voting.
Yeah. Lisa, Act 77 is historic. I mean, this changes to Act 77, it hasn't been done in many years. Governor Wolf decided that he signed the Act 77 in 2019, signed it into law. It's a historic election reform bill that makes the most significant improvements, if you will, to Pennsylvania's elections in more than 80 years. What does this mean? How does this change the landscape of this office? And let's talk a little bit about that. That includes the mail-in ballot. It also impacts how people are registered to vote, how they return the absentee or mail-in ballots. And let's talk a little bit about the $90 million in funding for the new voting system. There was issues with that, but let's talk a little. I know I threw a lot in there. Let's address Act 77 and why those changes are so significant for the residents of the city of Philadelphia.
Well, as you rightfully said, Act 77 is the most dramatic change to the Pennsylvania election code in nearly 100 years. For me, the top three changes that Act 77 bring Philadelphia voters and in turn the city commissioner's office is the 15-day voter registration deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the past, voter registration would end 30 days before the election, and that would give us time to register all the new applicants, make all the changes to the voter registration, and then get the poll books printed and then out to the polling places on election day. That day has been changed to 15 days before the election. So now 15 days before the election is the last day to register. So for the November election, the last day to register to vote is October the 19th. So by 5 p.m. On October 19th, your voter registration has to be received, not postmarked, but received by the County Board of Elections to be processed for election day. So why is that a challenge? Well, for example, in 2016, on the last day to register, a group brought us 50,000 paper applications. Envisioning that happening again 15 days before the election is quite a challenge. Of course, Governor Wolf also implemented online voter registration, which has dramatically changed the number of paper applications that we receive. but even online applications require work to be done at the county level. So part of the education piece of the Act 77 for us is to really encourage people that are doing voter registration drives throughout the city, which we know people already are doing them, and rightfully so, to please not hold those voter registrations to the last minute. And as you are getting them, to please bring them to the voter registration office so that we have ample time to process them, to make sure that everybody makes the poll book. The second piece of the Act 77 that is really important and people really need to be aware of, and there has to be a whole education piece around it, is Act 77 did away with the straight party voting. So that means in November, people are going to not be able to push straight Democrat or the Democratic button or the Republican button and vote for all those candidates in that particular party. They're going to have to vote individually down the ballot to vote for every candidate that they choose. That is
well, that's important, Lisa. I'm sorry to interrupt you. That is very important to highlight because people are going to be confused by that. So
yes.
There's going to have to be, Aissia, a lot of education around that issue, because what she's saying, you're not going to be able to, in November, vote straight Republican or vote straight Democratic.
Right.
And that's going to be a challenge, especially in Black and brown communities, especially in the older population, that they don't understand that process. But
and it's also a challenge because we have a new voting system. So,
oh boy.
So people who haven't voted yet on our new system, because there are a lot of people that only vote in a presidential election. So there are a lot of people that haven't taken advantage of the opportunity to vote on the system in either 19 or just recently in June. So they're going to come to the polls for the first time, probably, or in a lot of cases since
the last election. The last right. Yeah,
right. So they're going to see a new voting system. They're going to try and vote straight party. They're going to think something's wrong with the machine. It's going to cause, it has the potential to cause a lot of confusion. And we really need to do a huge education piece on the inability for voters to vote straight party, because it is going to have a huge effect on election day operations, as well as I believe down ballot races. Because
absolutely. We're joined now by Commissioner Omar Sabir. Omar, thank you for joining us. He was elected in 2019. Omar remains committed to empowering all Philadelphians to participate in the voting process by tackling voter apathy and education and educating communities about the importance of civic engagement. Omar created voter education campaigns to highlight the importance of registering to vote, and the impact of elections and the threat of voter suppression. That is very important. Voter suppression is a big issue, not only here in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, but in a lot of places, and it's going to have a huge impact in our presidential election. Omar is the architect of the Popular Vote Philly Vote campaign for the 2018 mid-election. So Omar, welcome, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Good to see you, my brother.
Good to be seen.
A good conversation. Aissia, you go ahead and chime in. Any questions for Omar and for Lisa?
So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the June 2nd election and how important it was to be able to get folks used to the new mail-in ballot process, and that I think the mail-in ballot process did help to get up to 32% in voter turnout, which when in a non-presidential and a primary is pretty good. But I think Lisa Rhodes has some questions too about the mail-in ballots. Lisa, you want to chime in about the mail-in ballots?
Oh, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
So I just had a question, and it probably was kind of already addressed, because a lot of people were saying there was a couple of questions that were asked, which was one had to do directly with some people didn't even receive their actual ballot until after the election. And so, luckily, since they had not received it, they went to the ballot, went to their polling place and did a provisional ballot. So what can we do to ensure that, that voters actually receive their actual ballot before the election versus after?
Well, of course, I mean, as you know, like I know, Lisa, it all depends when you apply. And you also had you had the Postal Service. The Postal Service, they run on their own time. I actually just received a piece of mail. It was addressed by, it was like something I did with the IRS. Like I applied online, they send you a notification. But, when I looked at the mail, it was like in April. It was dated in April, and I just received it. You know what I mean? So I don't know when they sent it out, but I can assure you that we, on our part, we mailed out all the ballots, but the Postal Service was operating on their own time. So I mean, again, we need to talk to the Postal Service, right? And then we want to try to encourage people to apply for those mail-in ballots as soon as possible. Right now, which is a blessing, some people had checked off that they already wanted to receive the mail-in ballots, so they don't have to apply. We could just go ahead and mail them out. So we want to encourage people as soon as possible, if they want to vote by mail, to go ahead and apply. More time, the merrier. And then again, they were able to still cast their vote. They came in person and voted. That always was a provision. But we definitely need to check back in with the Postal Service and see what support the Postal Service may need. Because a lot of people have been asking us what kind of support we need, but as we've been checking in with the Postal Service to see what type of support they need to make sure that everything gets mailed in a timely fashion.
Yeah. Lisa, you
Yes.
mentioned something very important, and Omar, you can chime in as well, and Aissia. The challenges that this COVID-19 has had and the impact on the way people, are going to go to the polling place now in November. The challenges in training people so that people can vote, get to the polling place, and exercise that right to vote. What change? What I'm not changes, but how the commissioner's office is adapting to this crisis that we've had across this country here in the city of Philadelphia, to ensure that when the November election, because we're in a very important presidential election. I mean, we're fighting for the soul of America in November. What changes are, how you guys are adapting to those changes, and how we're going to work together to ensure that people can get to the voting place, if they can't get to the voting booth, the mail-in ballots. How are we adjusting to this, and how we're going to make things happen effectively and efficiently for November so that people can get to vote?
Well,
good. You want to go, Sharon?
It starts right here with folks like you. I mean, we are always available to come out and talk, and we're gonna do whatever we can to increase our public face through the social media platforms that we have.
Right.
We need to do as many of these Zoom kind of meetings that we possibly can. They're going to be available for each of us. I can say it's, it is less of a challenge now that I have Commissioner Severe with me. So we know our work is cut out for us. It is not lost on us that the importance of this election, and certainly Philadelphia's prominence in this election. We also have already begun making some administrative changes with regard to our poll worker unit and our polling place operations, because we know that there has to be some changes on our end to help that those two pieces work better on election day. And we also know that we need to start soon, like today, and getting people educated on the changes. As I mentioned, there's a lot of education that needs to be done with regard to this, not being able for people to vote a straight party. It's going to be a huge issue. It's going to require a lot of education on our part. And in addition, even though more people took advantage of the mail-in ballot, and Lisa brings up a great point about their ability to come in and vote provisional, that changes again in November. So, that's going to be another big change in November. If you applied for a mail-in ballot and you decide to vote at the polls on election day, you have to bring your mail-in ballot to the polls, surrender it to the poll worker, and then you'll be able to vote on a voting machine, which is good because voters have the opportunity to vote on the system. But it's a challenge because we're changing something that we just had people do it one way, and now the very next election it's changing again. So these are huge challenges to educate all of our poll workers in an environment where we all can't come together. We're hoping that we'll see progress on the health front, and we'll be able to make, have classes and to do what we can. But we are planning for both scenarios. So it's a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of resources. And quite frankly, it's going to take a lot of partnerships with folks just like yourselves to get the message out and to help us communicate it throughout the city.
Okay.
That was really important. That was really,
Yeah.
really important what you said. Really critical.
Mhm.
Because we know the consolidation of the polling places made it difficult for some voters to get out, and the mail-in ballots were really important because of the consolidation. People didn't want to have to go to cross Broad Street from Old York Road to get to 5th Street to vote. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was Act 77 and the mail-in application deadline. Is that in the act? Because I think that May 26th deadline for the application pushed up really close to the June 2nd election, which is why some people didn't get their ballots until after the election. So if people applied but don't get their ballot until after the election, how can they bring the mail-in ballot to the polling place? So is there a possibility of getting that deadline pushed further away from the election to be able to give people time for the mail to get to people's mail-in ballots to them?
Well, we're real quick. Just a lot of those changes that we saw. Some people think that us as the city commissioners that we made, all of these changes and the deadlines and things like that. That's mandated by the state. Our state election code dictates a lot of the things that we do in regards with elections. I just wanted to, just be clear. And so that date, it will require a change in the election code so we can lobby to our state senators, our governors, state secretary of state, to make a lot of these different changes. But a lot of these things that we have to do are mandated by state and federal laws. So it's always, key important as well to send emails, making that request, but you'll want to do it to your state reps. You want to do it for your state senators and the governor asking this deadline to go back, because the deadline has always been ridiculous. That 1 week, it's just been ridiculous. And now I'll say, given with the COVID, but then again, like I said, we want to lobby to our governor. He still has emergency powers, as we know right now, to see if he can, change that deadline. But I would be definitely in support of that. And I'm pretty sure my colleague would be in support of that.
Absolutely. For example, the deadline for the November election is October 27th. That's the last day for voters to apply. And that's really cutting it close. And what really cut it close for us in June was the Memorial Day holiday. So not only was the deadline, unmanageable, it really became unmanageable when it was there was a Monday with no mail. So
well, I just want to say, Lisa and Omar, Usala Media is at your disposal to give this information out to the public square. And so we need to use these types of platforms, because I tell you what, it's a lot of information to process, to digest, especially for the older population, for the Latino community, and for the Black community. So, we definitely, this is paramount. This is so important. And we have such a short period of time to get this information, to educate and ensure that people will get to the polls in November and exercise the right to vote. And we have to do it. I mean, we have to use these types of platforms. I think it's paramount, it's important. And Usula Media is at your disposal to ensure that we can get this information out. However you want to use that, we're here to assist and to help.
Real quick, if I could just add something too. I just can't stress the importance of trusted messengers. When it comes to things like politics and voting and things like that, a lot of people are going to react off of the messenger. There's a lot of misinformation out there. So what voter suppression looks like in 2020 is a lot of misinformation that goes out. So you'll have these different groups that believe in voter suppression. They'll tell, a significant population in Philadelphia, that felons don't have the right to vote in Pennsylvania, which is far from the truth, right? But they'll put that information out there, and then they'll alienate, a whole population. So it's really the trusted messengers, the families, the friends, talking and communicating with people, and bringing out that different electorate that probably hasn't came up. Our seniors, they found a way, right? If you look at what happened in Wisconsin, you look at what happened in Georgia, those people were in line with their mask on for 4 or 5 hours. Thankfully, we didn't have this problem here in Philadelphia. So they'll find a way to the polls. We have to really, one thing what President Barack Obama did was he reached out to a different electorate that probably wouldn't have came out to vote. So there's a lot of people out there that think that their vote don't count. And that's the reason why they don't participate in the process. So that's, we want to look at that new electorate, people that's 17, about to turn 18. We got to get them registered and encourage them to participate in the process. And also, too, we talked about the voter turnout at 32%. But I don't think we realize how high that actually is. If you look at the last 2 uncontested presidential primaries, we averaged about 20%. That's an extra, 12 points in an uncontested presidential primary.
And with all the challenges, Omar, with all the challenges to have
all
that
the
percentage.
Challenges.
Yeah.
Right. That's a real high turnout. So again, I'd like to thank all you guys. Again, like I say, personal messengers. People know if they can trust you, they're going to respect the information. And again, also, we have sunshine meetings. You can check on our website to see exactly when the meetings are. But we always give out the new updates, what's going on with the city commissioner's office. And it's available on Zoom now, which is more accessible. We have more people attending now on Zoom, so you can get the information and you can find out the latest updates with the city commissioner's office.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the $90 million, the bond funding. What does that mean, Lisa? And how does that impact the city commissioner's office and Omar?
Well, first of all, now $90 million this Philadelphia didn't get $90 million. There was but the money that we did get that was for our new voting system.
Yes.
And that actually is not in the city commissioner's budget. The voting system is in the city's OIT budget. So that money was specifically for the new voting system. And that's why we have the system that we have.
Oh, so really, so the 90 million didn't really apply. Well, you guys really didn't get that money. We
got it in the form of new voting system.
Oh, that's how you got it. Okay, all right. So that covers that. Let's talk about the census redistricting blackout period. What does that mean?
Well, for us, it does. Our job stays the same, but what it means for candidates, committees, and voters is huge because it's people really going to have to do their homework and find out who they want to vote for and what their obligation is to themselves. And really, it's a great time to talk about that. People, the census is so vitally important. And we were in Detroit right before the pandemic struck the country, and they had like kiosks set up all around the city in places everywhere where people could just walk up and do their census. The census is so important, and it is so important for people, just not only when it comes to representation, which is vitally important, but also when it comes to resources. You know, Commissioner Sabir always makes the excellent point that the more you vote, the more you get. Well, if people know you're there, you're gonna get stuff too. If people don't know you're there, if you don't use your, you know, the census, and you don't let people know, hey, we're over here, you're not going to get anything either. So people really need to take, you know, responsibility for that and get out and be a part of that.
Yeah. Aissia?
Here, I think that again, we need to make sure we're undercounted in Philadelphia, and so we need to make sure that we are spreading the word about people filling out those census forms and going online. It only takes 10-15 minutes to fill the census out, and the deadline has been extended to August, I think, to be able to get those census your census reporting back in. So the census information is so vital to public housing, to all of the block grants that come down for Department of Human Services, the resources, and we know now because of the COVID-19 that we need more resources for our hospitals. We need more resources for food insecurity. We need more resources to make sure that people can pay their gas bills and the LIHEAP resources. So folks really do need to fill those census forms out. I think Lisa Rhodes has a question that she wanted to ask too. So I'm gonna let Lisa Rhodes jump in.
Oh, thanks, Aisha. Well, just to piggyback very quickly off of, since we're talking about the census, I think that is very important for people to understand that people of color typically, it was always more difficult for them to fill out the census forms because they didn't really trust it and they didn't trust the government. And I think that when we tell people to get out and fill out the census, that it's important that we talk about how confidential it is. And that if they complete it, it doesn't impact them in a negative way at all as far as their personal finances or living conditions, but on the contrary, it will improve it. So I think that's very important to know, that I think sometimes people aren't so much being lazy and not completing it, but they're kind of leery. So, you know, again, when we're the messengers and the change agents, that we have to just make sure we also deliver that part of the message. But going back to the voting process, I have a couple of questions, which was one, have you guys like sat down and did a lessons learned? Because one of the things I discussed with Aissia was that I was proudly a deputy commissioner on election day, and I think she was too. For helping people and answering questions, and and then Commissioner Sabir, I was in touch with you several times to let you know what was going on, kind of like word on the street, and this is what's happening. So I wanted to find out, is there lessons learned, and if not, if we could facilitate helping in any way by providing you with the feedback that we received. So, for example, I know that Philadelphia, one of the things that we did differently from other counties was that we had, or you guys had, very conveniently, the different stations or locations where people could go and actually drop their ballots off, vote by mail ballots. And that was a very good thing because, again, people weren't sure if their ballots would be received in time if they mailed them. But then the problem with that was that they were filling up so quickly that, people were saying they couldn't put them in the box, which is a good thing as far as voter turnout is concerned, but a bad thing as it pertains to, people feeling like their vote is being secured. So has there been any discussion about how that's going to be handled this time around?
Yeah, whenever we got the request, I do believe within, I would say at least within 20 minutes, we got somebody there to grab the bags. Again, like I said, it was an unexpected, high turnout. I mean, we was looking at around 21%, but it was like extra 10 points. When you look at, that's a high number. But we got it done, and yeah, I mean, all feedback is good. And then, and in fairness with Act 77, I guess the whole vision of it was to have early voting centers where people can come in and, apply for their ballot, receive their ballot at the same time, and they'll be able to vote, and this is supposed to be 50 days prior to the election. So again, we need more resources to do these things. COVID came into play, if the governor or the state, the legislator will provide us, with more resources, more staffing. That's something that we can explore, you know what I mean? Because the whole idea really the mail-in vote and early vote, you're really supposed to do it beforehand. That way, on election day, you're not. So again, we have more time now. Us putting together, getting that ballot ready, 50 days prior. In the primary, when they wrote the law, they didn't count in all of the court challenges with the ballot and things like that. So it's hard to get the ballot early. But I do think it's going to just be nice changes in November. And again, all feedback is good for us. We're not type of people that, that get upset, when you give us criticisms, which we need. Again, like I said, we have our sunshine meetings every week, typically.
What,
So
what
just
is
check
those,
in.
Omar? I'm sorry to interrupt. What those meetings are held when?
Typically, they're every Wednesday at 11 o'clock.
And that's
right?
open to the public?
Open to the public. We take public comment. We give updates. We let everybody know how much, typically how much voter registration we got, how many mail-in ballots we got, and we had the return board. So everything is public. If you go to philadelphiavotes.com to check in, sometimes we have additional meetings as well. You guys can, check it out, make the comments. And then also, like I said, you can hear, what's going on. A lot of times people say, well, we don't know what's happening. But it's hard for us to really, plan because, like I say, there's so many different moving parts with our job.
Yeah.
Because you have the state, you have the Secretary of State, right? You have
Yeah.
the governor, right? Just the day before, he extended, the deadline. So people call me up and say, hey, man, why didn't you tell me, the deadline with postmark on June 2nd? I'm like, the governor, he didn't tell us. He had a press conference at 5 o'clock the night before. That's when we found out that is an extension. I mean, so it's a lot of moving parts. But again, we have sunshine meetings, so that so they're typically every week. And typically Wednesday 11. You can go to them on Zoom, and you can hear the latest what's happening. And then we also taking public comments. So these feedback, you can put that feedback on the record. We'll have it. We'll address it. If you guys want to put together, a community, coalition where we plugging in people and we bringing in people to see how can we make elections better. I mean, we're open to that. We want to see better elections. But it's going to take all of us to do it. And when we all see that the importance of the election and how many resources it's going to get us once we increase our ballot participation, and I think it's going to be significant.
Yeah,
So
I have a question quickly for both. Lisa, since you've been elected to that office, and also Omar, what changes have both of you have made to that office to increase transparency and to get people more involved in the Philadelphia City Commissioner's office? So what are the changes, positive changes, that you can highlight for us that you've made since you've been elected to that position? We can start with Lisa and then Omar.
So first, thank you. Well, voter turnout has increased every election since I've been elected. Of course, I don't take credit for that fully, but it has actually been occurring, and I think that's doing a lot. In part, people are more engaged. More elections mean more. People are following them more because of the social media. So we have a really strong social media presence in both on both Facebook and Twitter. And we also have the city commissioner's office has a Twitter handle also, which is new. We've updated our website. We have changed our election night reporting system. It's much easier and more manageable. And for myself personally, I mean, we have really brought the commissioner's office into the forefront of public engagement. I am out at least 3 days a week, going to a community meeting or some organization and talking about voting. And one of the things that two things I'm most proud of. The one thing is our what we've done in the schools. We go to schools throughout the city, and we work with them to encourage people that are going to be 17, that are 17, that are going to be 18 before election to vote. We've seen a lot of schools in Philadelphia be recipients of the governor's civic engagement award as a result of that. We've also started a student poll worker program in the city of Philadelphia, where students can now be poll workers on election day. We've also got online campaign finance and one-stop shop. People don't need to file, go run around to all different places to file their campaign finance information. They can do it online in one stop. We also put the petition process online. People can get their nominating petitions online and print them out. They don't have to come down to City Hall and do all that. So there are just a couple things off the top of my head, but really proud of the body of work that we've been able to accomplish, especially in these challenging times. And as I started the call, I'm really encouraged and thankful that I have a partner in Commissioner Sabir, who is also no stranger to work and has been going out and doing the community meetings and helping with this engagement. And I think that was really something that was missing, quite frankly, from this commissioner's office. And we're happy to be able to have a platform and to be able to do this. And, certainly we're just always looking to get better. As Commissioner Sabir said, we're interested in improving elections, and, feedback is welcome. Lisa mentioned that, you got some feedback on election day. If you want to compile that and bring it to us or send us an email or have a meeting, we're happy to do that. We're always interested. We know we're not doing everything perfectly. And sometimes even when we think we are, somebody has a better idea. So we're happy always to continue improving the process and to hear other viewpoints on how things can change. And if I can just circle back with the bags on election day, as Commissioner said, I found out that the governor extended that deadline watching the news like most of you. So it was, we were not prepared, quite frankly, to be able to accept those ballots that late. And we ordered these bags that were available to us that met our security needs. And we got them out, and we were able to partner with City Council to get them to help us. I mean, and Committee of 70. I mean, it was a pretty big lift in a short amount of time. And we did have a city employee that when we were getting the call that their bags were getting full, we were driving somebody out. But as the day progressed on election day, traversing the city became more and more of a challenge because of the things that were going on throughout the city on that day. So some of the places had 2 bags to start with, where we thought we would see a bigger participation. But we have those bags for November. We have ordered bigger bags, and hopefully as we'll be able to get people to do this early. We were not able to do that because of the COVID-19. We didn't have the ability to have these to stand up these voting sites where people could come in early, apply for the ballot, and get the ballot at the same time and vote on it. We didn't have that. So hopefully, as I said earlier, hopefully we'll continue to see progress in this public health crisis, and we'll be able to do that. And that will alleviate the crunch at the end. But it was everything but the kitchen.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
we have to take a short break. You're listening to Voices of Change on Ursula Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break. You're listening also. We have the city commissioner here, Lisa Deely, and we also have Omar Sabir with us. We'll be right back. We're going to take a short break.
If you came across someone struggling,
We're here at Pan American Behavioral Health at 5th and Cortland. Pan American Behavioral Health in combination with the Commons Market. They're giving out boxes of vegetable out to the community. And we have volunteers like Lara Ramirez. Lara, tell us a little bit, how's this going so far?
It's been busy,
Yeah.
but it's been fun and rewarding.
Yeah.
Rewarding in the sense of everybody coming and feeling good about, just doing kind things for others.
Yeah.
So lots of people through here.
And they're flowing through, right?
Absolutely, coming through, but it's been great.
Good, and this is good stuff in the community. We need this at this time. People coming together
Absolutely.
and doing something good, because this is a good cause for the community. As you know, this pandemic has hit hard a lot of people, especially Black and brown people, and poor people that live in this community. They have gotten hit really hard. So this is a good thing, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for volunteering.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're listening to Voices of Change with your co-hosts, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. We have the city commissioners both here with us, Chairwoman Lisa Deely and Commissioner Omar Spear. We also have Lisa Rhodes on the phone, and Lisa Rhodes had a question that she wanted to ask. Lisa, can you unmute and ask your question, and then we'll close out with a question.
Okay. First, I want to say, commissioners, you did a great job, because this is the first time that you had to implement so many different option in a short period of time. But my question is, different states are actually doing vote by mail a little differently, in all fairness to both of you, where ballots are actually being counted as they come in versus starting the count on the morning of election day. So it enables those states to be able to basically announce who the winner is, either on election night, like we normally are accustomed to, or within the next couple of days. So is there any way or any conversation around changing the process as it pertains to when you start counting the mail-in ballots?
Yes, that would require, again, a change in the state law. We would like to have that we could start opening those, start opening and counting 3 weeks prior. That would be great. But again, that would require a change to the state law. Before they actually, the original legislation they had, we wasn't able to open them up until 8 p.m. On election day. So they actually changed it back, to the day, to early on in the day, 7 a.m. So
Wow.
yes, that would require a change by the state legislator, or if our governor would enact emergency powers that I believe that he has, he can push that time back, I believe.
Okay, because it's going to be a lot of anticipation around wanting to know, who the winners are, as far as Pennsylvania or in Philadelphia County specifically, since we're going to be so critical in the next election.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that is true. But I just want to remind everyone too that we want to be as accurate as possible. I believe the accuracy far as outweigh the anxiety of rushing to do stuff, and then you make a mistake, and then it'll be a lawsuit challenge, and then you'll see a whole bunch of ballots get thrown out. So I think accuracy is important about taking our time and making sure that we get everything done properly and accurately.
Mm-hmm.
I want for that same issue around the integrity of our elections. The integrity of our elections is incredibly important as we are in the electoral process. I want to shift a little bit of focus, because we are talking about policy, And I also want to include the funding. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act, was passed to help mitigate the impact of the COVID-19. The state got $3.1 billion, I think. The governor has reserved about $1 billion for the second wave of the virus. So one of the things that you all talked about was how I know you had 3 shifts working those the mail-in ballots and getting the mail-in ballots out to people. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you both about was putting together a budget to be able to present to our senators, because the senators were the ones that came up with how the CARES Act funding was going to be spent. They were very aggressive about making sure that the CARES Act went to things that would help folks who were hurting, small businesses, folks who are need mortgage and rental assistance, things like that. So how do you think that you could put a budget together so that we could present it to the governor to see if, because the money has to go back. If we don't spend it all, it has to go back to the federal by the end of the year. So I think that I'm hearing that we could have 50% turnout in November. We could, given the mail-in ballot. So how will that impact what you're doing?
Well,
the funding too. How can they, like you said, present a budget where they can get some of these resources?
Well, just to be clear and on the record, we submitted budgets to the Senate. We submitted budgets to the governor. We submitted, budget increases. I mean, people know about it. Again, we can do it again. But I mean, we've been making this act. I mean, it's not like we haven't been asking. We've been asking. I mean, but we'll do it again. I mean, if you guys want to, see, what we're doing, but we have been asking. We have been letting everyone know that, we need more resources. I mean.
Yeah. All right. So now's the time to make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, now we just need somebody to, believe in it,
Yeah. If resources are needed, you can't operate a commissioner's office, A, with limited staff. B, I mean, you're stretching your staff already as is because you don't have the resources to hire more people. And if we want to have an impact in this election in November, you've got to put resources on the ground. I mean, that's just that you can't get around that. And I think that you are making a very valid point, Omar and Lisa. Resources are needed. How then can we get these resources into the hands of the commissioner's office so that we can have an impact? And if they're not going to put resources, then that can have an impact on either way, on people coming out to vote, not to vote. At the end of the day, that pitch has to be done, and someone has to listen. If we want to have a positive outcome in November, that's just the bottom line. Is that right, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, really, there's 3 things that we need, and we've been pretty articulate about it. We need space, we need staff, and we need money.
There you go.
And that's just what we need. I mean, we were able to meet a lot of challenges because of COVID. So because of the COVID, the city was closed. So we were able to put staff in City Hall. We had people in the hallways at tables with Shore Terminal set up, so they were socially distanced. We were able to get additional space at Delaware and Spring Garden that wasn't being used because of the COVID crisis. So we had people on another floor. We are actively looking for more space because we needed more space to begin with, because we knew that we had intended to do the Act 77 and the early vote model. But now, in addition to that, we need to be mindful of the social distancing requirements. So that makes us require more space. We are going to need more people, and we have asked for a budget increase. And when we asked for that budget increase, to be fair, we had no way of really knowing what this mail-in ballot change will mean.
And it's massive.
And that our budget increase that we have made, it's being modified as we speak, because the numbers have all gone up, because we need to be able to fully automate the mail-in ballot process. so that we don't have 30 people sitting around a table taking ballots out of envelopes. That's just not, it's just not feasible in November to do that, because we know that the participation levels are going to increase dramatically. So we are going to go and do our homework and find out best practices throughout the country. As I stated, we were in Detroit right before COVID, and they have a pretty impressive mail-in ballot system and accounting system. And we know that other states are doing it. But what everybody should also realize is in the states that are doing it, it has taken, 5-7 years for them to fully implement it. It is not something that is like flipping a switch. And unfortunately, in the face of the November election, that's really what our charge is. Our charge is to flip the switch and to change the way we're accustomed to voting in Philadelphia in the most important election, I beg to say, in our lifetime.
Yeah. Well, I would like to thank once again Lisa Deely and Omar Sabir for participating, commissioners of the City of Philadelphia, and bringing out this information, important information, that the public square needs to hear. Definitely, we're going to bring you back. Usula Media is at your disposal to continue to bring this information. We will continue to be in contact to ensure that people are getting this information. It's needed, and November's just right around the corner, and there's a lot to do and a lot of information to get out. A lot of training and education is part of this process. Aissia Richardson, thank you for participating and always bringing good information to Voices of Change. Anything else before we go, Aissia?
No, I just want to say thank you to Commissioner Deely and Commissioner Sabir. Throughout this whole process, you guys have been nimble. You have tried to be, make sure that the electorate knows what's going on. You've been communicating with the elected officials about the challenges and about what we're facing. We have 3 months, until the November election, and so we want to make sure that we're continuing to keep in communication with you. Anything that we can do to help you do your job, again, we're at your disposal.
Yes. Thank you. We've concluded the show. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. See you next Saturday. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night. And thanks so much to Lisa Rhodes for joining us too. And happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy
Birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
All right.
All right. See you guys, and thank you.